In the second year of my marriage to Marcus, I became a quadriplegic due to a car accident. My parents quickly cut ties with me. My former friends and relatives all avoided me. Only remained by my side, as always, a distinguished professor. He constantly took on private tutoring and commercial gigs to fund my treatment. His colleagues and fellow alumni mocked him for losing his academic integrity and disgracing his profession. He ignored them, continuing to wash my clothes, cook my meals, and clean up after my incontinence. Unable to bear being a burden for the rest of his life, I suggested we divorce. Marcus was silent for a moment, then smiled and took my hand. We exchanged vows when we got married. For richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, we promised to never leave each other. Grace, I love you, and I will never leave you. In the years that followed, Marcus steadfastly kept his promise. And under his meticulous care, I miraculously regained sensation. Just as I was about to share this good news with Marcus, I unexpectedly overheard him talking with a female student. Marcus, I'm pregnant. If you won't take responsibility for me, I'll die right in front of you with your child in my womb. My hand, which had just regained sensation, trembled. Carelessly, it slipped into a puddle in front of me. Foul-smelling muddy water seeped into my mouth and nose. My airway was cut off at the neck. It was excruciating, agonizing. Instinctively, I tried to call out Marcus's name, but mud choked my throat, and I couldn't utter a sound. In my final moments, Marcus turned and saw me, rigid and motionless. Grace! He frantically hung up the phone and pulled me back from the brink of death. Then, with trembling hands, he cradled me and carefully wiped the grime from my face. Over the years, countless similar incidents had occurred. Marcus had long grown accustomed to them. And I, too, had become numb. That car accident 10 years ago left me a quadriplegic. Every part of my body below the neck was completely devoid of sensation. I required constant care, around the clock. Marcus had hired nannies for me and consulted doctors. But everyone shook their heads in resignation. Doctors had issued death certificates for me more than once, declaring I wouldn't live past 3 years. Marcus, however, refused to give up. He took on part-time jobs and commercial gigs, working himself to the bone to earn money for my medical expenses. Despite his fastidiousness, he had to turn and massage me daily, cleaning up the involuntary excretions. With a promising career ahead of him, he repeatedly sacrificed opportunities for promotions and raises because of me. He carried me around, seeking medical help and remedies everywhere. He was only 30. Yet, gray hairs already speckled his temples, and his hands were calloused from hard work. His once upright posture had gradually bent under the weight of life's burdens. I saw him more than once, sighing over his past glories and weeping as his colleagues ridiculed him. When I asked him about it, he would just smile and say to me, "Grace, I don't regret it. As long as I can be with you, I regret nothing I do." But at that moment, I regretted it. I regretted living such an undignified, half-dead existence. I regretted that a moment of selfish desire had burdened Marcus for life. I lowered the only part of me that could move, my head, and spoke softly. "I heard everything you and Chloe just said. Marcus, let's get a divorce. You've done more than enough for me." Marcus froze. Large tears streamed down his face. He clutched my hand tightly, repeating over and over, "Grace, I won't divorce you. What happened between Chloe and me was just an accident. I love you, and only you. Don't make me leave you." He frantically tried to explain to me. There was nothing between him and Chloe, he claimed. The boss at that commercial gig insisted I drink. I got too drunk, and when I woke up, I found myself in Chloe's bed. "Grace, please don't be angry with me. I truly never intended to betray you," Marcus explained, utterly flustered. But he didn't even notice the incredible tenderness in his eyes when he mentioned Chloe. Long ago, when we first met, he had looked at me with that same tender, ardent gaze. But after I became paralyzed, through 10 years of torment, the only thing left in Marcus's eyes when he looked at me was deep exhaustion. He pretended to still love me, pretended he couldn't live without me. Only this way could he convince himself to grit his teeth and carry on. Only this way could his decade-long sacrifice not seem like a joke. Marcus believed he was an excellent actor. But he forgot. Before I was paralyzed, I was a brilliant psychology doctoral student. I understood what he was thinking better than anyone. I sighed softly and murmured, "But I'm tired. I don't want to live burdened by guilt, existing like an unfeeling animal. Marcus, if you truly love me, then find me a scenic and peaceful place where I can quietly spend my remaining days." Marcus was reluctant. When I first became paralyzed, Marcus had hired many nannies and caregivers for me. The first nanny poured boiling water on my legs. Though I felt no sensation, the scalded flesh and clothes stuck together, almost killing me from fever and infection. The second nanny, fearing I might get into trouble, kept me locked in a dog cage all day. Marcus, returning from work, was nearly distraught when he saw this. This distinguished professor, always gentle and polite, lost his temper publicly for the first time. Me is a human being, a person with flesh and blood, dignity, and feelings. How could you treat her like an animal? The nanny scoffed dismissively, and said with utter scorn, living like this, she's worse off than an animal anyway. Marcus couldn't endure such humiliation. He fired the nanny on the spot and from then on, personally took care of me. For 10 years, I never developed a single bed sore. That alone was testament to his dedication. He had done more than enough for me in his life. Our feelings for each other had long been exhausted. I couldn't selfishly keep him trapped by my side any longer. I began to refuse food, threatening to starve myself to death. Marcus, who had initially resisted, slowly began to waver and compromise. Finally, he withdrew all his savings and arranged for me to stay in a high-end long-term care facility. While completing the admission procedures, Marcus was reluctant to let go of my hand. He told me repeatedly, "Grace, I won't divorce you, and I won't abandon you. Give me some time. There are many excellent medical resources abroad. When I return from abroad, I'll come home for you immediately and find a way to cure you." A quadriplegic patient, abandoned by her family and with no relatives, was left in a long-term care facility. Her fate was something anyone could foresee. Yet, Marcus and I both tacitly chose to deceive ourselves. He swore he would come back for me. And I nodded in agreement, just as he wished. However, on the very night Marcus left, an accident occurred again. The adjacent hospital room housed a patient with Alzheimer's disease. During his nap, he accidentally set fire to the curtains in my room. Paralyzed from the neck down, I couldn't move. I could only watch as the scorching flames surged towards me. By the time the caregiver found me, I had severe burns over much of my body, my flesh festering, clinging to life by a thread. Upon receiving the news, Marcus immediately cancelled his flight and rushed back to my side that very night. Lying in the intensive care unit, ICU, I listened to his hysterical arguments. This man, who had lived a dignified life and always spoke softly, was now shouting and yelling in the hospital corridor like a madman. "Is this how you care for my wife? She was such a beautiful, vain woman, how can you expect her to live like this now?" He tore up his appointment letter from a prestigious foreign university. He stayed by my hospital room, never leaving, voicing his deep regret. I had ruined his life once again. But there was nothing I could do. I could only close my eyes tightly, pretending not to hear his cries of anguish. Until one calm afternoon, Chloe burst into my hospital room. She grabbed my hair and brutally slammed my head against the bed frame. Then she dragged me along, pulling me in front of a mirror. The grotesque and terrifying face in the mirror startled me. But before I could speak, Chloe suddenly broke down and sobbed. She pounded my thigh with force, muttering, "Why aren't you dead yet? Why are you still alive? Why did you call him back at the last minute? Marcus had already agreed to go abroad with me. Why won't you just let him go? Grace, how can you be so selfish? Do you know I've waited for him for 10 whole years?" Marcus hadn't lied to me. His acquaintance with Chloe had indeed been an accident. But this accident hadn't happened recently. It was 10 years ago. At a dinner party 10 years ago, they fell in love at first sight. Marcus had considered divorcing me and marrying her. But in the end, he chose me, torn between love and duty. He told Chloe that, according to the doctor's diagnosis, I wouldn't live much longer. He felt he had to fulfill his responsibilities as a husband before he could be with Chloe with a clear conscience. Chloe agreed. But that wait lasted a full decade. Marcus had wasted his youth and delayed his career for me. Chloe, too, had spent the prime of her life waiting for him. Her eyes were filled with helplessness and resentment. Her voice grew choked. "Grace, please let him go. It's been 10 years, Marcus and I are no longer young. The baby in my womb is likely our only child in this lifetime. Can you really bear to see us be unable to have more children? He's done more than enough for you over the years. I beg you, give him, and give the child in my womb, a chance at life." Chloe told me many things. She spoke of the humiliations Marcus endured to earn money for my medical expenses over the years. She spoke of how he'd fainted multiple times in his office from overwork. 3 years ago, a boss, to humiliate him, forced him to drink. He drank himself to stomach bleeding, yet still endured the humiliation and pain, picking up the scattered payment from the floor, bill by bill. Watching his reddened eyes, my heart nearly broke. But he said that with that money, he could buy imported medicine for his wife, so you could sleep soundly at night. Chloe cried harder as she spoke. Her gaze held both jealousy and accusation. Many times, I wished he could be a little colder, a little less responsible. But he just couldn't let you go. He was such a proud and brilliant man, and look what he's become because of you. An unfaithful man tried to shoulder the lives of 2 women. But in the end, he condemned everyone to a life of suffering. I should blame him. Yet, I was precisely the one person in this world with the least right to blame him. Marcus's mistake was his infidelity. But his greater mistake was caring for me too well. I lowered my head and murmured, "What do you want me to do?" Chloe suddenly stopped crying. She stared directly at me and said without hesitation, "I want you to die. If you don't die, Marcus will never find peace. If you don't die, none of us will ever be free." With that, Chloe grabbed my neck and said, almost cruelly, "Look at yourself now, you're neither human nor ghost. What's the point of living? Just die, okay? Die." Chloe's grip tightened. And in my agony, I surprisingly felt a faint sense of liberation. I slowly closed my eyes, awaiting the nightmare's end. But, of all people, saved me again. He embraced Chloe, holding her tightly. "Chloe, are you insane? Why would you do this? Do you realize you almost took a life just now? You have such a promising future. Is it truly war? Sacrificing your entire life for a person like this?" In that moment, Marcus finally spoke his true thoughts, unconsciously. For a person like me, to sacrifice his entire life. It wasn't worth it. He loved Chloe. Loved her so much that he couldn't bear to see her ruin her future and sacrifice her life for a person like me. And I lay there like forgotten trash, quadriplegic, on the cold floor, peeking at the happiness that once was mine. Tears streamed down my cheeks, flowing into my ears. But I didn't even have the ability to reach up and wipe them away. I could only wait for Marcus to help me up with a look of pity. This time, he explicitly broke things off with Chloe in front of me. Chloe didn't try to stop him, she quietly got up and left. As if such scenes had played out between them countless times before. They both knew instinctively. Neither of them would truly leave. In the days that followed, Marcus and I continued our methodical life. He tacitly avoided mentioning going abroad again. And I, understanding, didn't press him about his relationship with Chloe. We lived as we had before, maintaining polite distance, deceiving ourselves. But I could see that Marcus was truly exhausted. He didn't dare entrust me to anyone, or even let me out of his sight. Even during his classes, he had to bring me along. The school administration didn't object after learning of Marcus's situation. But more than once, I suffered incontinence in full view of everyone. In meeting rooms, in classrooms. As the foul odor permeated the air, all eyes would turn towards me, slicing at my heart like knives. Marcus, however, acted as if he smelled nothing, continuing to clean me up and tidy things. Professor is so great. His wife is like this, and he still hasn't abandoned her. If it were me, I really couldn't do it. If you ask me, Professor and Ms. Chloe are a match made in heaven. That woman is like a ghost, clinging to Professor and refusing to let go. Just look at her face, wow. Can't you have nightmares sleeping next to that? Facing all these comments, Marcus acted as if he heard nothing, continuing to push me around the school, watching the sun bake my urine-soaked dress. Everyone thought he loved me dearly, but I always felt it was an unspoken form of revenge. Until one day, our story attracted journalists for an interview. The reporters, uninterested in anything else, delved deeply into the complicated relationship between the 3 of us. Gossip and rumors were ceaseless. Such humiliation, for a man as aloof as Marcus, was undoubtedly more agonizing than torture by 1,000 cuts. Chloe was the first to break. She had an abortion and went abroad alone, leaving Marcus's life forever. Upon receiving the medical records of her abortion, Marcus also collapsed. His eyes red, he looked at me hysterically. "It was you, wasn't it? You brought the reporters here? Haven't I been good enough to you? Why would you humiliate me like this? Even if I owed you from a past life, these 10 years should have paid that debt, shouldn't they? Why won't you just let me go? Grace, I'm truly exhausted." Chloe's presence was like the last light in my life, my only solace. Why must you snatch away even this last glimmer of hope? Overcome with emotion, Marcus frantically grabbed a handful of sleeping pills and shoved them into his mouth. He turned on the gas in our home, intending to die with me. I laughed a helpless laugh. As I laughed, tears welled up in my eyes. Actually, he didn't need to do this. My death alone would have been enough. I hadn't told Marcus yet that my right hand could move. I could control the wheelchair myself. And I could choose whether or not to continue living. Once the sleeping pills took effect, I bit my tongue and gripped Marcus's collar with my teeth. Maneuvering my wheelchair, I pushed him out, inch by inch. The moment Marcus's body was pushed out of the house, the sparks from the wheelchair's wheels instantly ign. It an explosion. Raging flames devoured everything in an instant. I closed my eyes, smiling. Marcus. This time, we could both finally be free. I hoped that after my death, you could find the happiness you desired. When awoke, he found himself lying in a hospital room. Chloe sat by his bedside, her eyes red and swollen like peaches. Memories from before the explosion slowly flooded Marcus's mind. He paused, then spoke in a hoarse voice. Where's Grace? How is she? In that moment of intense emotion, Marcus had indeed wanted to drag Grace to their deaths together. But once everything settled, he began to regret his actions. He had resented Grace, hated Grace for years. Yet, they had relied on each other and been together for so many years. All those memories, both beautiful and painful, formed the entirety of Marcus's life. He had long grown accustomed to this life. To make him cruelly kill Grace, he couldn't do it. To make him neglect Grace from then on, he couldn't do that either. Recalling his last words to Grace, a hint of regret welled up in Marcus's heart. He suddenly yearned to see Grace again, to apologize properly to her. That way, they could continue their routine life, just like before. Though life might be difficult, as long as they were together, there would still be something to hope for. And wouldn't have to carry so much guilt. Upon hearing this, Chloe's expression immediately darkened. Her face fell, her voice tinged with jealousy and resentment. I've been here watching over you for 3 days and 3 nights, and you don't even ask how I am. Instead, your first thought is to ask about that bitch, Grace. What's so great about Grace? Why can't you forget her after all these years? I know you feel guilty about her, but after all these years, you've long since repaid anything you owed her. With that, Chloe lowered her head, looking utterly wronged. Do you know how heartbroken I was when I heard you were in trouble? If you had died, what would be it come of me and our child? Could you please think about me and our baby for once? Marcus's heart pounded violently. A wave of unease swept over him. He looked up at Chloe, a hint of suspicion in his gaze. Child? Didn't you already have an abortion? Chloe turned away, speaking with a defiant tone. I lied to you. I just wanted to see who you would choose between me and Grace. Marcus, you've already made your choice. You can't fool yourself, you love me, I'm in your heart. If that's the case, why can't you just let go of the past completely and live happily with me? Marcus, I truly care for you. As long as I can be with you and our child, I'll do anything. Overcome with emotion, Chloe embraced Marcus, crying so hard she could barely breathe, but just stared blankly ahead, lost in thought. After an unknown amount of time, he suddenly reached out and pushed Chloe away. Forgotten details now strung together, forming a coherent picture. He spoke, a mix of anger and fear in his voice. So, you called those reporters yourself, didn't you? You wanted to force me to compromise this way, and so you wrongly blamed Grace. Marcus felt that he had truly been blinded by rage. Grace, a person who couldn't even care for herself. How could she possibly contact reporters herself to frame Chloe? This was Chloe's own orchestrated act of self-pity. At that moment, an unspeakable rage suddenly surged in Marcus's heart. He liked Chloe's gentle beauty, her docile kindness, but he disliked her deceitful tactics. Thinking of the scorn and gossip he had endured recently, thinking of Grace's last sorrowful and helpless gaze, Marcus's heart violently convulsed. He had already wronged Grace enough. How could he have said such things to her? Self-reproach and guilt gnawed at Marcus's heart like knives, leaving him at a loss for how to face it. Seeing the truth exposed, Chloe no longer pretended. She raised her voice, her tone filled with resentment. What if I did? I do. St wanted you to harden your heart and make a real choice. A person like Grace shouldn't even be alive. Only when she dies will everyone find release. Marcus, I love you. Everything I did was for you. Now that Grace is gone, forget her. Can't the 3 of us live happily together as a family? Chloe spoke earnestly, but Marcus detected a subtle wrongness in her words. He looked at Chloe excitedly, asking urgently, You said Grace is gone. What does that mean? How can she be gone? I was rescued, so Grace should have been rescued too, right? Seeing stammering and refusing to speak, a desperate Marcus pushed her aside, intent on asking the hospital staff for answers. His casual push, however, sent Chloe into a complete emotional breakdown. Chloe sat on the floor, sobbing uncontrollably, and said, "Grace is dead. She's dead, do you hear me?" She chose to commit suicide herself. She herself felt she was a burden on this world. Grace has already made the choice for you. Why can't you move on and embrace your new life? Chloe's words struck Marcus like a thunderclap. He remembered the last image in his mind before he lost consciousness. He stood rigid and stunned, muttering, "I remember. Grace. She died to save me, didn't she?" As he spoke, Marcus suddenly felt a sharp pang in his chest. He closed his eyes in agony, letting a torrent of complex emotions wash over him. Grace was dead. Marcus stood frozen, unable to utter a single word. Over the years, he had fantasized countless times about Grace's death. Marcus had always believed. Only when Grace died could he find liberation. Only when Grace died could he truly bid farewell to the painful past and begin a new life. But when he actually heard the news, he felt no joy at all. Only an emptiness in his heart, as if he had lost something vital. He couldn't accept that he had been responsible for Grace's death. Even harder to accept was that Grace, knowing everything he had done, had still resolutely chosen to salvage him with her own life. But what caused him even greater agony and breakdown was Grace's medical report. The report showed that Grace's body had begun to show signs of improvement. Perhaps she would have fully recovered before long. Even the doctor had said, "This is indeed a medical miracle, which precisely shows that your efforts, Mr. Marcus, were not in vain." What a tremendous pity. Grace could have recovered in such a short time. He had yearned for this day for so long. But in the end, on the very eve of success, Marcus himself had destroyed it all. Tears of pain threatened to drown Marcus. He was submerged in the anguish of losing Grace, unable to escape. No matter how Chloe tried to persuade him, he only repeated the same words. "Grace didn't commit suicide, I killed her. If it weren't for me, Grace wouldn't have ended up this way. The car accident 10 years ago was caused by me. Grace became like that because of me. I owed her so much, yet she chose to save me with her own life." Just as he finished speaking, the hospital room door was pushed open. The investigating police officer stood there, his eyes meeting Marcus's, having heard every word he had just said. The officer's expression immediately turned serious. "Mr. Marcus, you said Ms. Grace's car accident was related to you. Is that true?" Chloe's face instantly took on a strange look. She frantically stepped in front of the officer, saying anxiously, "Officer, don't listen to his nonsense. Marcus is just overwhelmed with grief, unable to accept reality. Grace's car accident back then was an accident, and her suicide was her own choice. It has nothing to do with anyone else. Marcus is too kind, that's why he's blaming himself for everything that happened then. Is that truly the case?" This explanation clearly failed to convince the experienced detective. The sharp gaze pierced Marcus's heart like a knife, leaving him no escape. After 10 years, Marcus finally had to face the truth of what had happened. To face that ugly and sordid truth. "And I finally understood where's decade-long steadfastness truly came from. 10 years ago, Marcus and Chloe were having an affair in his car, damaging the brake pads. Unaware, I drove out, and the brake failure caused my car to overturn. Originally, Marcus could have rescued me immediately. But then he suddenly remembered that the dashcam seemed to have recorded him and Chloe together. This distinguished professor, who had maintained his integrity his whole life, feared his reputation would be ruined forever. So, in the immediate aftermath of the accident, he chose not to save me. Instead, he seized the opportunity to destroy the dashcam. This action directly caused me to miss the critical window for rescue. For, if I had died in that accident, he would have grieved for a while. Then he could have been with Chloe with a clear conscience. If I recovered, Marcus would have hardened his heart, cut ties with Chloe, and maintained our marital relationship. Then he could have continued his peaceful life. That way, he would still be a good husband and a good professor in the eyes of the world. But instead, I lived. Marcus had to shoulder the responsibility of caring for me, had to account for his momentary lapse in judgment. For 10 years, whenever he saw me in pain and distress, he would be reminded of his past actions. He had neither the courage to kill me nor the nerve to admit what he had done. He could only endure the pain while pretending to care for me deeply, and was the solace he sought for himself. He used love as bait, deceiving that young woman out of 10 years of her youth. He used responsibility as an excuse to trap me for life. As I looked at this hypocritical and selfish man before me, I felt that these 10 years of marriage had been nothing but a colossal joke. The years I had considered beautiful were, in fact, endless sordidness and lies. Because of the words Marcus spoke in the hospital room, he was Nat is a key suspect by the police. The events of 10 years ago were beyond investigation. But in the burnt room, the police found the origin of the fire and various illicit drugs. Only then did I learn that over these 10 years, Marcus had harbored murderous intent towards me several times. But due to various reasons, he had never dared to act on it. Until this last time, when I chose death myself. Ultimately, Marcus was arrested for murder, and his affair with Chloe was publicly exposed. In an instant, Marcus transformed from the loving, refined distinguished professor into an unfaithful, wife-murdering brute. A deluge of curses and accusations rained down, nailing him and Chloe firmly to the pillar of shame. Faculty and students at the school collectively boycotted them. Everywhere they went, they met with scornful glances and ridicule. Overwhelmed by worry, Chloe accidentally miscarried. This time it was no pretense. She not only completely lost her child but also became permanently unable to conceive again. Due to the extremely negative impact of the incident, Chloe and Marcus were both expelled from the university. Their futures, reputations, marriages, happiness, everything they had aspired to, was ruined overnight. Even so, Chloe naively still wanted to be with Marcus. But, his face filled with rage, rejected her. Get out. Get out of my sight. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have ended up like this. Do you really think I loved you? You were just a diversion, a way to pass the time. The one I loved, from beginning to end, was only Grace. How happy we used to be. If you hadn't interfered, how could we have become like this? Happiness? Didn't I ever truly have beautiful, pure moments of happiness? Thinking back, perhaps we did. When we first met, Marcus was a brilliant and accomplished professor of classical studies. And I was the most outstanding psychology expert of my generation. Everyone believed that my marriage to Marcus was a match made in heaven. In those early years, Marcus had loved me clumsily but sincerely. He would line up like a school kid to buy me my favorite pastries. He would accompany me to check out all sorts of novel and interesting things. At the foot of my bed, Marcus's clumsy, old-fashioned love letters are still hidden to this day. And his phone gallery was filled entirely with my photos. Each photograph captured our happiest moments, and my most beautiful years. When did our relationship begin to change? It seemed to be after Chloe appeared, and yet also before she appeared. As my career continued to develop, the conflicts between Marcus and me became increasingly apparent. He began to resent my demanding work and my discerning eye for human nature. He complained about my strong personality, always urging me to quit my job. Grace, I'm a traditional man with a stable income. I don't need my wife to be the breadwinner. Instead of pouring all your energy into work, why not quit and have a child sooner? But I also had a career and dreams I had fought for decades to achieve. I dared not forget the hardships I had faced along this path, not for a moment. Therefore, I unhesitatingly rejected Marcus's suggestion. It was from that point on that small frictions began to appear between us. Marcus would often use overtime as an excuse to frequently travel for work and come home late. I trusted his character, and I believed in his love for me. But it was this very trust that led me to this fate. And it was this trust that kept all of us trapped in a decade of agony and conflict. Now, I have found liberation in death. As for Marcus, he will also pay the rightful price for his actions. I had thought everything could finally be put to a complete rest. But then, Marcus did something I never would have expected. While under investigation, Marcus began frantically declaring his love for me to the entire world. He would look at the wedding ring on his hand, reminiscing about our past. He well. D look at the wildflowers by the roadside and blurt out, Grace loved dandelions the most. He even wrote a very long public apology letter and released it to the media. Every word in the letter was heartfelt and earnest. It detailed the reasons and circumstances of his infidelity. It explained why he was with me in the first place. It laid out the bitterness and helplessness he felt over the years. He confessed that his initial decision not to choose Chloe was, firstly, because he couldn't bear the public's judgment of a teacher-student affair. Secondly, it was because I could provide him with better support in his career. And only lastly, there was his slight affection for me. As for why he cheated, it was due to his low self-esteem. He needed Chloe to help him reclaim his male dignity. I never intended to hurt Grace. What happened that day was just an accident. For these 10 years, I've lived with guilt, constantly trying to make amends. Now that I've finally received my deserved retribution, it's actually a form of release for me. Only by atoning for my sins can I earn Grace's forgiveness and rekindle our destined connection in the next life. Marcus was an exceptionally eloquent writer, and this public apology letter was deeply moving. It actually garnered sympathy from quite a few people. Some said he was merely guilty of a momentary lapse in judgment. Others claimed the fault lay more with Chloe and that Marcus deserved another chance. Watching's actions and all the discussions, I found it utterly ironic. His apology letter was just like his actions over the past decade. On the surface, it seemed heartfelt and sincere, but in reality, it was utterly selfish and profoundly hypocritical. The sensational case of the professor's wife murder remained a dominant topic. The verdict concerning the case was quickly delivered. Marcus was sentenced to 10 years in prison. This verdict completely shattered the last shred of his pride. He finally realized that tedious letter could not bring me back to life, nor could it erase his wrongdoings. He would ultimately have to pay the price for his actions. On the night before his imprisonment, Marcus, unable to bear it all, chose to take his own life. Just before he died, he could finally see souls, he could finally speak his heartfelt remorse to me. I'm sorry, Grace. I owe you in this life. If there is a next life, I promise to treat you well and repay everything twofold. I looked into his eyes indifferently and said, word for word, Marcus, you won't have a next life. A hypocritical and heartless person like you is destined to endure torment for eternity. Thank you for watching today's story. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. We look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments section. Feel free to share your views, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more exciting stories. See you next time.